We have two very, very special guests tonight. These are people that I just adore. They do great, wonderful things in our community, and they're sitting in the back. Molly Sanchez is the lady in the corner, on the corner there, and she is from the Inland Northwest Foundation, Community Foundation. We'll talk a little bit about Molly as she prepares to come up and present to us. And then Christine Meyer is the director of the Avista group. And Christy and I have worked together for 5 years, thereabouts. And Molly and I have worked together before. And then Lauren came in for the last year and a half, I think. And Lauren couldn't make it tonight, so I am so delighted to see Molly here. It's like a class reunion for me. So that's very exciting. So, any questions from any of you regarding anything at this point in time? Any questions for Bill? I have some questions for Bill. Okay, why don't we start with who wants to go first? Christy, Molly? Christy's going to go first. Okay. Just a little bit about Christine Meyer. Christy graduated from Gonzaga University. I consider her the salt of the earth. I don't know if you like this or not, but she's a farm girl. And she's very honest, very open. When we have coffee together, I walk away so high. You know, it's just nice to have that friend there and talking with. Anyway, she's been with Avista for about 15 years now.
Longer than that. I started in 2000.
In 2000, so that makes it about 17 years, I think. So I forgot, I didn't get the last 2 years, did I? No. Anyway, she's gonna go first tonight, and I should also, you were the past president of the Inland Northwest Red Cross, is that right?
I have done that before, yes.
Yeah.
And this morning I got appointed to Whitman County Ports Commission, so first female commissioner in the history of the port.
Congratulations.
Wow, I'm impressed. So both of these ladies have been very engaged with our community in North Idaho as well as Eastern Washington and probably elsewhere. And I really appreciate both of them a lot. So with that being said, Christine, would you come up and meet the people that you are going to be talking with? And how are you...
So do you want me to start just a little bit with a background kind of in grant making and philanthropy from corporate organizations?
Yeah, I think that...
Have you covered that?
I think that would be important. And if you kind of zero in a little bit on the Avista Foundation, that would be helpful. The way we're going to do this with both Christine and with Molly is they're going to talk about their foundations, what they do, what they don't do, how to build relationships with them, and so on and so forth. Then we're going to do a role play, and 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it takes. And we've got about an hour apiece for this. And then we want you guys to respond to questions or anything, or any questions you might have, in this case for Christine, and get a sense of what it's like, you know, from your own perspective or your own foundation or a nonprofit. Okay, so that's kind of the format. So with that being said, Christy, would you tell us about Avista, please?
Sure. So let me ask first, how many of you have taken this course before or seen this content last time at all? So a few people have seen this content, but the majority haven't. So Avista is your local utility provider, and we are in 5 different states now. We're in Alaska now as well. We own a utility company up there. And then Eastern Washington, North Idaho, and parts of Oregon and Western Montana. And a lot of people think, well, you have lots of customers in Montana, but we don't. We just have lots of hydropower. We don't have any customers actually in Montana, but we still invest in those communities because of our shared responsibility for community development and investment there and making the places where we live and work a better place. Leave it better than you found it kind of philosophy. So we are over 100 years old, and we look pretty good for being that old, I think, not bad. We're approaching 130 almost, I think, now. So ever since the beginning of Avista's presence in this neck of the woods, we have roots that run deep in community investment. The people that work at Avista also live there. They educate their kids there. They recreate there. They grocery shop there. They turn on their lights there, just like everybody else. So we don't exist separate and apart from the communities we serve. We exist as an integral part of those communities. And so in doing that, it lays the foundation for the reasons why we invest back into the communities. So we're using the services, we're using nonprofit organizations just like everybody else, and so we want to see those organizations, for-profit and not, thriving and growing and doing the best work they can. And so we invest in making that happen in a number of different ways. So not just financially, we have 1,500 employees throughout our entire company, so we provide volunteerism, and we provide in-kind opportunities. Not everybody has a backhoe to bring to the party. We do, and we do that sometimes. Let's see what else. We have a matching gifts program, so we're underscoring the things that our employees are interested in and encouraging them to do that by matching the dollars that they're investing with your organizations. It's another way to broaden where we're investing as well. So our focus areas are medium narrowish. A lot of people are more narrow than we are, but there is some stuff that we don't do corporately or through our foundation. But our employees don't have that same kind of focus area. They care about what they care about when they care about. So our matching gifts program underscores that encouragement that we're making to our employees to care about the broadest things that they care about. I might not be giving to, I don't know, whatever it is, but they might be. And so we underscore that and encourage it by making matching gifts. We encourage people to volunteer, so they have the ability to do that with the discretion of their manager during the day sometimes, depending on what their work is. I don't want the guy leaving the call center phone ringing to go volunteer, or leaving the bucket truck for a second to go serve and do something, but maybe the accountant can set down the 10 key for a minute and go do that in the middle of the day. But we don't have a set rule about, some industry have 2 hours a month and that's it, that's paid. We don't have that kind of rule at Avista. It's on a per department, per manager discretion. So they still have to get everything done that they need to get done, but there's latitude throughout our company to encourage people to volunteer.
And they get paid for doing it?
If they're doing it during the workday and their manager has approved it. So some people, for example, like I just said, that I've joined a port commission, and those meetings are on Thursday mornings at 10. So I go to do that, but I'll probably stay late to finish out the day because I have latitude in what I do. I mean, the lights don't need to be on for me to be reading grants or whatever, I can do that flexibly. So that's the kind of thing. Within the discretion of the manager and the nature of your work, there can be latitude to go volunteer. And that's part of what we're encouraging our employees to do, because we realize that they're not just taking their personal passion, but they're also taking the encouragement of the company. They're taking their skill set that was developed while they were working and bringing that to bear as a resource of the company and themselves to impact the communities that we're serving. So sometimes people are looking for board members that have marketing skill sets or bookkeeping skill sets or HR professionals that are going to help develop your organization through their boardsmanship. And so those things are resources that we can bring to bear through community engagement, community involvement. We encourage our employees to do that. And that's something that surprises a lot of people. I think that a lot of people think that, we just kind of look like this all day, but we don't. we're out in the community in different ways. You know, I mean, you'd be surprised at what people notice. And I think this is true of a lot of companies. You know, somebody's, I don't know, what might somebody be doing? Somebody might be a meter reader, or somebody might be an outside serviceman, and they're seeing the community through a different lens than what I might, because I don't walk the neighborhoods and know that something's broken, or something needs attention, or there are kids that need to get to school, or, you know, these things that when you're exposed to the community in a different way, everybody in the company brings a different perspective, brings a different experience, brings a different background, brings different skill sets to bear, and comes back and says, hey, I encourage so-and-so to write a grant to the foundation, or I noticed that this is a need and I want to volunteer at my kids' school to coach after hours, or, you know, those kinds of things. And that's what we're encouraging people to do, and we'd hope that other companies are doing the same, recognizing the value of their employees, not just as, you know, worker bees or ants in the salt mine kind of thing. They're bringing a perspective, a skill set, a passion, a resource, and we're encouraging them to do that. It doesn't happen if nobody does it, because they were just busy at work all day. Any questions, I guess, about that part so far at all? Anything that surprises people?
Do you have volunteer grants? Like if you do so many volunteer hours,
Like a match back?
yeah.
We don't. We don't have that. I have built that program, but it has not been funded or approved just yet. That's something that I continue to advocate for, and I also advocate for expanding to include our retirees as eligible participants in our matching program, and the budget isn't there to do that just yet, but it's something that we've built and understand could bring value, and so we ask a lot, but not yet. So with regard to the process of accessing corporate dollars for philanthropy, I guess, the one thing that I would say that is universal, not just to Avista, but to lots of organizations, is they don't know you need something unless you ask them for something. So assuming that there is this level of awareness for what your organization is doing or what your needs are is not necessarily valid. So I wouldn't be afraid to ask. The worst that could happen is they say no, but the best that could happen is they say yes, and let me help you with that. In the instance of Avista, our process is entirely web-based for the formal application, and that's at avistafoundation.org. And so you can apply for grants there, and our grant cycle opens in January, and it closes April 30th, and then we use the month of May and June to do site visits and contacts and follow up and that sort of thing, and then we announce our decisions the first week of July. Our sponsorships and that kind of thing is all year round, and it usually, we say, allow 45 days for response on some of those things, but it's faster turnaround than what the grant is. The dollar amounts are smaller, but that's just kind of par for the course, I think, with most people's event sponsorships versus grant making. We've had to get a little bit more formal than what we used to. So when I started way back, we used Excel spreadsheets and paper forms, and you called, and sometimes you got a fast response and sometimes you didn't, and sometimes we knew that you had asked and sometimes the email was lost, and so we decided to formalize things and purchased an off-the-shelf product. And so that's why it's designed to be more responsive, and so things don't slip through the cracks, because Excel spreadsheets are only as good as the inputter. But the other way that we're doing this is not intended to depersonalize, but to improve the customer responsiveness and make sure that things are on par. You know, people before, and I think that a lot of organizations have that more informal process. More and more people, you'll notice, are becoming formalized and putting applications and cycles, and because I think a lot of people recognize if you don't know what the system is, then that leads to a terrible customer service experience. You know, it's easier, yes, there are rules, and sometimes it's sad to say we stick to the rules. You know, if you miss the deadline, I'm sorry. But at the same time, everybody's on the same playing field then, and it can make you really crabby if there isn't a cycle, but you just didn't know and they never said anything to anybody about how it worked. So we went through some growing pains with that, where you felt bad the first year having to say, this is the deadline, and I'm sorry, it's passed. But now that people are becoming more and more familiar with that, and that little bit of formality around it has led to a lot more satisfaction in the experience for people, because once you know how it works, then you can count on that, and there's predictability in it as well. But not everybody works like that. So in the instance across the board, whether they're doing something in a formalized way or not, I would also give you the advice that it is, so they'll have this formal process or not. It is easy to say no to a piece of paper. It's hard to say no to a person. So for as much as people will formalize their process, I would encourage you to introduce some level of personality into the process to the best of your ability. When an organization is far away, that might be harder to do, but there's still a local branch manager, there's still a local store manager, there's still somebody that you can introduce yourself to and ask if they can advocate in the process for you. Sometimes there's a committee, sometimes, just putting a face to your application, a face to your organization, and a face to the work that you're doing could be the differentiating feature in your application. And don't be discouraged by that as well. When somebody says, I'm sorry, but I'm not a part of that. I don't make that decision. You would be surprised who talks to who, even if they're not a part of a formal process. And so I would encourage you to put that face to it. And I think that's part of what the exercise, so I'll segue to that part. That's part of what the exercise this evening is intended to model for you, is how to do that. If you can get an introduction to a person within the organization, and even better if it's a person within that decision-making process, take the opportunity to do it, because now that you're a champion in the process, and you're sitting there with a stack of 100 or more applications, and your board is saying, can you tell us a little bit about this one? Can you tell us a little bit about that one? When you're just saying, they applied for $5,000, and I think it's for a jungle gym, and it's in Colotus, I think. Next. So this is for Family Promise, and Cindy Wood is the executive director there, and I met her for coffee, and she was telling me about this thing that they needed, and what I really got the sense from her was that, and so you can see that elaboration that happens just from that conversation that differentiates, and the board and the decision makers can also hear that in your voice, that there's a different level of validation for your proposal than the one that was just a piece of paper that they're reading with monotony, the same as they read it too. Putting that personality to it is a huge differentiator, and that person becomes an advocate for you and your project in the process. So with that, I would invite Cindy up and let's model. So go ahead. Are there, I guess, while we're getting set up, are there questions? Yeah. We'll push the pause button from time.
What kind of budget does Avista have for philanthropy
So,
in general? Or, I know it goes probably year by year or whatever.
our philanthropy on a year-over-year basis averages over $1 million. So it's between $1 million, $2-ish, $3-ish. Sometimes there are exceptional years. So when we had Windstorm, it went way above that because we were doing a lot of philanthropy and repairing things for community centers, doing feeding programs during the week that we were out and all that sort of stuff. So it can fluctuate, but minimum it's always probably about.
And is there funds set aside for different regions, or is it one big pool that everybody's competing together?
It's fairly close to just calling it one big pool. I work from 2 checkbooks. So we have a corporate checkbook that does not have a 501c3 requirement on it, and I have a foundation checkbook that has a 501c3 requirement on it. But as far as our focus areas and the process for making application, it's exactly the same. One application that comes through our foundation website at avistafoundation.org, and then I worry about noticing whether you were a 501c3 or not and which checkbook I'm going to work from.
Is there a criteria to even apply for grants?
Yes, so we have a geographic requirement that you be located within our service territory. Again, the Matching Gifts Program is the only one that doesn't have that. If an employee is giving to where they give to, we'll match it. So geographic requirement that it be within our service territory. requirement that it not be discriminatory or religious in nature. Exception to that would be a religious organization running a non-discriminatory program that you don't have to be the religion to access. So a lot of churches in small communities are the ones that run the food pantry, for example, or run weekend backpacks for kids out of the food pantry. So that's an example of something that would be an exception operated by a religious organization. And then we have our focus areas, which are health and human services, education, and community development. And there are details about those and examples on our website that I can run through, or you can find pretty easily. But our grants tend to be $5,000 or less. Exceptions to that would be for capital projects. When we go above that $5,000, it typically is a multi-year pledge in order to accomplish that aggregated sum that's above $5,000. But we're usually a last mile funder as a function of it being a smaller amount as opposed to a first mile funder. And we don't do a lot of funding of staff positions, again, associated with the dollar amount. It's a mismatch. $5,000 or less doesn't get you a person, and it's usually not as sustainable. Using a grant to fund a person that's only that size is not sustainable because we usually don't do repeat grant making.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure.
Can you tell me the difference between a grant and a sponsorship? Sorry, Bob, I should know
So
this.
grants
Missed that
are,
one.
in our programming, grants are program-related or long-lived assets. And we color that a little bit more creatively than some people where we consider your personnel to be long-lived assets. So training might be an example of something that would fit into that because inputting into your personnel has a ripple effect for the lifetime of that person. So long-lived assets is a little bit more creatively defined for us. And our sponsorships are usually associated with events.
Okay.
So the other thing a lot of people don't necessarily realize is that in grants for us, it's specifically bound by the proposal and what you put the request together for. Sponsorships are, what is the word I'm looking for? Unrestricted funds. So if your greatest need and your highest priority is unrestricted funds, a lot of times you'll look at a sponsorship, and that's not necessarily true just of us. Sponsorships, a lot of organizations don't necessarily realize that's typically an unrestricted funding resource. So it just kind of depends on what your needs are. Okay, so we'll ask questions a little bit later, but let's start this part. Imagine we're at a coffee shop. The cacophony.
Rock, the bakery,
Yes, we could be at the Rocket Bakery. This will be this is the
good
red
coffee,
house.
good rolls,
Okay.
good conversation.
Good to know.
Yeah, the way this works is that this is an initial meeting, in this case, between Family Promise and Vista Foundation. And Cindy has already sent, as you know, a letter of interest, a letter of inquiry in. And Christine has agreed to meet with her to explore the possibilities. She may or may not give Cindy an indication to submit a proposal or not, or she may give her recommendations what to do at this point in time. And at the end of the role play, she'll talk to Cindy, and after that, please ask all the questions you want. Is that okay? All right.
Hi, Christine.
Hi, Cindy. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Glad you found the place.
Yeah, me too. It turns out I know a lot of the people here, so it's a pretty good place. I didn't know.
Well, eavesdropping is welcome then. So since we talked, you had submitted the letter of interest and we spoke briefly. Can you tell me a little bit more about the project beyond the four corners of the letter? It sounds really interesting. to me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also going to go ahead and give you we have a flyer, and I made a copy of the information online. That was a really good recommendation to just go ahead and apply online because it's so much more in-depth and really got into the project more. So I'm excited to share that with you. So as you know, we're talking about we want to hire a van driver, and I just heard recently that Avista doesn't necessarily fund positions, and as I was thinking that through, then part of the reasoning, I understand, is because you don't do repeat grants. But I know with our organization, I'm quite confident that we will be able to do the $5,000 that we're asking the following year, that we'll be able to incorporate that in our budget. And especially because it is, on the one hand, only $5,000 to fund someone for a year, that is something that would be doable.
Right, and we talked about that a little bit, where it's not something that we're typically funding, but as you had described the position, since it was going to be part-time, that the amount might be a worthy exception to our usual seeing, I guess, with that kind of request. Can you tell me a little bit more about the function of the van driver within your organization? I understand from our phone conversation earlier that it sounds like it's a pretty important position within your organization. Can you talk a little bit more about how that fits together with what your work is?
Yeah, it really is foundational. Our families that come to us, that we're working with our homeless families with children, and some, or maybe even most, come with non-reliable transportation. And the way that our program works is we have a day center that's downtown Coeur d'Alene, but then our host sites, they rotate every week throughout the community in different houses of worship. And so we need to be able to transport families to and from the day center and that host site at night and in the morning. And that's part of the promise and family promise, that we're going to provide that transportation. We recently were granted a new van, and so we're good to go with equipment. But as far as driving the van, then we've been working with a volunteer van pool, and really, honestly, that has been a drain on resources in the organization, and the position that does the coordinating, as well as the responsibility is also recruiting, and it's a little bit of a hard sell for something that's so integral and daily.
So do you have somebody in mind for this, or, I mean, how will you do this as a part-time position? So will you hire more than one person to fill this, or is this a single person that you're looking at? How are you going to fill this?
We will be looking for 2 people, and since we've talked, then I've talked to different family promises in our region, and I've just kind of put that question out there, what do you do? And there's a lot of different answers. One of the best that I think would work for our organization is having a morning van driver and an evening van driver.
Okay.
And then that way, if somebody's sick or on vacation, then you have a way to back it up as well. And then, again, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and it's 5 o'clock in the evening, so it doesn't tie them up so they have to be back from fishing or whatever it is they do. This job would work with somebody who is a professional, but it would also work great for someone who's retired and just wants a little extra income.
Okay.
And that's kind of the demographic of who I'm looking at, is possibly somebody who's retired. We work with an organization called Experience Works that they're looking for job skills for low-income seniors, and I could see this being a great opportunity for someone that may apply with them as an additional job.
So is this a position also that, I guess, you talked about having a little bit of turnover with it? Well, how do you, I mean, I have some ideas about the stability of the position. Do you think that there's going to be much turnover, or what's your expectation?
I'm excited to find out
Yeah.
about that as well, because we haven't had a position like this that is really targeted for this one time. I think that someone who's attracted to this position and is bought into our mission will stay.
Okay.
And when I say that, 2 to 3 years, and that would be very satisfying to have that stability of one or those 2 people during that period of time, and then just rehire, and you'd learn through the community who's interested and who is enjoying it, because we have great drivers now. They're limited, and I don't know, because they really haven't broached. It's kind of a sensitive thing to say to someone who's volunteering for you. Well, if we paid you, would you want to keep doing this more? So I want to wait until we're a little closer to the process of knowing where we're going. If
Do you have a
we're gonna
time
do
frame for this that you're wanting to get these grant dollars in place and get this person hired?
this. We'd like to begin really as early as possible in July, mid to late July.
Okay, so I'm going to push the pause button here.
Okay.
So, do you feel like you've covered everything with regard to that particular initiative? On the van driver?
Right, I'm just thinking of the questions that you're asking, have I? I think so.
So, yes, I would agree. So when you are taking the opportunity to meet with somebody, one of the things, you'll be tempted to stay completely on point and cover I'm just talking about the van today. I don't want to disrespect somebody's time, and I'm just going to stick to the van. We're going to get in and out in 15 minutes. Well, if we've both taken the time to drive all the way to the coffee shop, you are going to want to utilize a 30-minute time block is not unreasonable for both parties, and you can probably cover, depending on your project or your grant, because you also have your document as a leave behind, you did a pre-call, do not waste the opportunity by just focusing on the van. So this would be a good point when we unpause to think, what would be a segue to the balance of my organization? Are other priorities that they might be able to think about? Because whether you say yes or no to the van, if I say yes or no to the van, do you want me to stop thinking about your organization and what else you need?
No.
So this is a point at which you would segue to talk about the balance of your organization and also potentially key in on what other opportunities there might be for us to partner. Well, that sounds really great.
Thank you.
What else is going on at your organization? So I beach balled her,
Yeah.
but even if I didn't, you would think of a segue.
One of the things we're really excited about really digging into right now is our host recruitment, another foundational area that we love to engage our volunteers in. And with that, I'm so excited about all the different options that could come from that, because as we grow our organization and have more hosting opportunities, more places for our families to go, there's more volunteers, more people that are engaged, more people who are face-to-face with just being a solution to homelessness, then that allows more people to be able to really be able to offer their skills and talents and be able to expand the program, whether that is coming in and reading with our kids or doing a fundraiser for us, or we right now have an opportunity where we are looking for help with data entry. And I understand that Vista has a value within the workplace to volunteer, and I wonder, how do you access that? Because we would love to be able to partner with Vista and just
Sure.
invite.
Well, we
They're all
have
in.
a number of different ways that you can do that. We have a electronic bulletin board at Avista, and anybody can post to it about anything. So even if you hadn't met me before, if there are other folks in our company that you would encourage to pass along information about volunteer opportunities, about fundraisers that they can attend to support your organization, about committee work or board positions that you're ever looking for. Those are all different ways that our employees like to plug in. Some people are doers, some people are meeting attenders, some people are, get their hands dirty and work with people on things. So we would encourage people to send us information about that anytime that comes up. We can promote those opportunities to our employees all the time. I would encourage you to consider a tiny bit of structure around that. If it's a volunteer opportunity, to provide us with the information that in a single flyer or an email that's easy to read, we can glean what it is, the position that you're looking for, some skill sets that would be helpful in doing that work, some time commitment, maybe, it's a once a month committee, or maybe it's, evenings at 4 o'clock, we're looking for somebody who wants to drive our van, you know, or whatever those kinds of things might be. But with a little bit of information, we can help match make and figure out and promote to our employees. And the same with events. And if you ever have a dinner auction or something like that, or tickets that you're trying to sell.
Put a flyer in there for you for our golf.
Excellent. So if you can send hard copies, or if you have electronic copies, then we can push that out to employees anytime. It's an easy thing to do, and we find that when folks engage with our employees, they sometimes will translate into longer-term investors in your organization. They may become donors. If they know about opportunities to invest in your organization, they may access our matching gifts program, all of those kinds of things. So volunteerism is the gateway to hooking our people into service with your organization. I guess I'd be interested in understanding, you know, I think there's maybe it's a misperception, I don't know, if your organization is limited to folks with an ecumenical focus. How do the heathens among us serve your organization and your population?
It is not structured to just be I think you used the word ecumenical. We have, well, the hosting within a congregation is possibly the most tied to ecumenical, but we do have weeks, I'm going to say 15 to 20 weeks a year, where we're inviting the community and their friends to come and host. It's really open. It's still in a house of worship, but it is not necessarily the people that attend there.
Okay.
So we really wanted to open up the opportunity because our founder, Karen Olson, she will say she believes Americans want to help, they just don't know how, and they need that avenue. And so you don't have to be associated with a congregation to do that.
Okay.
We can accommodate it.
Okay. Well, I guess I've learned a lot in our conversation. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you had anticipated, or that I should have asked that you'd be interested in sharing with me about the organization, your work, or the proposal at all?
There's two things. One, I did bring along a little video that is a guest family that rode our van, used our van transportation, and they were just a part of this video project that we did and shared a little bit of their testimonial. And I wanted to share that because it gives a little bit of the face and the heart to the people that we're helping, and just added fun. You may notice that she is expecting, and she had her baby yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So that was very exciting for us all, and they have graduated as well. But before we go to that, then I have been looking forward to this opportunity. That question that you just asked about what question would you like to ask me? What's your favorite question, or what do you anticipate when you ask that? Because
It depends on the nature of the conversation. I think if I hadn't have asked that, I would think about the kinds of things that you hear as either misperceptions or opportunities to correct the record with, this isn't like airing of the grievances or something like that. But would it be fair to say that in the past other people have had that misperception that your organization is entirely faith-based?
Yes.
And so those kinds of things, if it didn't come up in the conversation, you might take the opportunity to do some of that education work. I think one of the other things, maybe if your organization was in the news or something like that, you could take that opportunity. Sometimes people will use it. So at the beginning of the conversation, we didn't do the rapport building because we were in the interest of time. So some people will use that as a rapport building opportunity to personalize the connection. So you would ask something maybe like, Have you ever volunteered at our organization? Have you ever served homeless? So you can establish what this decision maker or what this person's relationship is to your mission personally. So that the hook in advocacy goes beyond, is this a fit for a Vista? You know, is this a fit for Christy? And how do I build personal advocacy, if it's possible, within the bounds of her professionalism, to think about or engage in my organization? So something like that. You might ask some, you know, have you ever served homeless before? Or, you know, I don't know, whatever that might be. Something that digs into the opportunity to personalize the connection to your mission.
Gotcha.
So that's how you might use that. So that again, I'm thinking about, or this person is thinking about your organization beyond the obvious. We put homeless people in churches and move them around every
Right.
week.
You say that with such passion.
If I didn't know that, that is what the person would be thinking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't take the opportunity to reveal the connection differently, that's what they walk away from it from. You spent, 15 minutes talking about proposal, application process. I mean, do you want to walk away from this knowing nothing more than, I think she likes the color blue and she ordered tea? How do you connect beyond, so, I mean, that is a part of it. Like when you go to a car dealership, do you walk away from that thing feeling like, geez Louise, that guy knows a lot about me? It's on purpose, because they want you to not be able to walk away. You're buddies now. You're coming to buy the van from him, nobody else. It's the same thing. You are selling your organization in this project, and you think about this person that goes back to work that has a mountain of applications, and how do they remember you? How do they remember your organization? How do they remember the work that you're doing? Why do they care about it differently than the other 100? I mean, I hate to say this, but it's kind of Thunderdome, people. I mean, you have to personalize it and make it count, make it matter for them. When they say no, that decision should be hard as heck, not easy. Not, well, they run a van to the church. I mean, that's easy to say no to. But I can't say no to Cindy, who likes the same kind of coffee as me, and got me to admit that I had served in such and such before and remember caring about the kids and blah, blah, blah. That's hard to say no to.
And if I had somebody in mind who I wanted, because you've asked both times, and you kind of asked a lot of questions about did I have somebody specific in mind that we wanted to hire. If I had this really fun character that was great with kids, that probably would have been good. Right.
It could have been interesting. I don't know that I'd, bring Joe the van driver to the coffee shop, but if we had done a site visit, I would make sure Joe the van driver was there to run into or to introduce to, or, because that's the other thing. This project has to feel impactful. It has to feel like it's going to make a difference in these people's lives. And work is not done by vans. Work is done by people. So when you have somebody come to your organization for a site visit, I don't think you need to march the entire organization in front of them, but one or two people isn't going to hurt to see and personalize the delivery of this service as differentiated from every other model for homeless service giving. You're competing against UGM, you're competing against the Mission, you're competing against House of Charity. Your model is different. Why is it different? Why should I give your homeless shelter the money for a van driver and not their homeless shelter the money for new windows or a dishwasher or whatever it is? So I think part of the differentiation in that is the people that do the work. And so if there's an opportunity, whether it's through the video or the site visit or whatever it is, to see the people that are doing this work that I would feel are going to do it better than anybody else. And that's why we would want to give you that money. So, and when you're talking about who your funders are, there are different funders that will approach this decision differently. But if you can humanize the decision, the odds are better in your favor. Everybody can turn in a good P&L. Everybody can turn in an awesome mission statement. Everybody can get their name spelled right on the application.
Not everybody.
Make it hard for them to say no to you by introducing the differentiating features in your work and the people that are doing it and why you're doing it better than anybody else. So think about the opportunities to do that within this process. Not cheating, but winning.
Winning.
So I guess that's what I would say about it.
Okay. Would you like to see the video?
Yes, but I would say,
Yeah.
if you're doing this next time,
Mhm.
I would start with the video so that it gives a context to what it is your project is and where it fits.
Okay.
That's the only thing I would change.
Make him cry, be inspired.
Well, and the debate for me was, do I start with it or do I end with it? Because starting with it, that can be good, but ending, that's going to leave. an
It could
impression.
go either way. So that's, okay, so
Can we turn the light off?
shut up here. I don't want to say this like control the conversation, but if you were an attorney, would you just let the other guy go first? Let the, control the conversation so that, to the extent that it's possible, so maybe not control, structure the experience so that your points get made and their questions get answered and they walk away an advocate. So you don't go into the conversation and just sit there and wait for the person to ask questions, because, do you see how I did that?
Mhm.
What did we do for the first 15 minutes?
We developed rapport.
I just peppered you, and did we get to
Yeah.
where you wanted to go with it? Maybe.
Yeah.
But if you open it with context for your organization and where your project fits into that, and opportunities to personalize the work and differentiate, and make those your objectives out of the conversation, along with rapport building along the way, then you made a good use of the 30 minutes. Does that
You're
feel
really
okay?
great to talk with because you have the great questions. You do this for a living,
Mm-hmm.
but you made it really easy to go through and you asked the deep questions and it really helped me know where to go. But that's really helpful because I don't drive in these conversations, so that's really good.
Yeah, so I mean,
Perspective.
pre-work the conversation. There's the elevator pitch, but then there's the, if I got 30 minutes with somebody, what are the 3 or 4 things that I need to accomplish that they need to walk away with? To have made an advocate out of this person, not just somebody that, pronounced my name right at the end of it, kind of thing. You need this person to walk away as an advocate to the best of your ability within that 30 minutes at least that you have with them. And know what you're doing, care about what you're doing, and differentiate it.
So would it be feasible to put that video kind of in the middle? So you're going to, I kind of do the celebrate, remember, fight back kind of thing where you want to talk about what's going on, blah, 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 and then you show the video and then you kind of talk and wrap it up. And
It depends on what the content of your video is and the objective in your meeting with this person. So I don't think that there's a single recipe for it. Like there's...
go with the flow.
I have your objectives in mind and start and lead the conversation that direction, but don't freak out if you have to switch it up. Like, oh my God, this person doesn't know anything about our organization. We have to rewind just a little bit. Or this person knows a ton about it.
Right.
And here's the direction that I will take this then. Maybe there's a deeper dive that you want to go into a particular initiative or this person thinks they know everything about my organization, got some work to do, kind of thing. So you just kind of go with it. Yep.
Do you make it a practice to do any research on the organizations that you meet with?
It depends. If I have lead time, yes. I, at a minimum, will look into our database and see what they've applied for previously, what I have or haven't awarded, if I have employees that are volunteers there. So I'll do that baseline research within our system to see what the nature of our relationship has been previously. If it's in an outlying area, I will call an employee. If they appear in my database as a volunteer or as somebody that gave matching gifts before, I will ask the employee to give me some information about it, or if I see somebody is volunteering with your organization as a board member, I'll ask and say what's right, wrong, or indifferent about the organization and how you see it. So that's the other thing. If you have somebody that you should do your homework too. So do you have volunteers from Avista or, this other organization? Take advantage of that environmental intelligence. Utilize those employees because, no, not everybody does it the same way that we do, but don't risk that they don't by not, we have, Christy is coming to our thing, hey, I'm going to check in with Bob from the Line Dock, who volunteers at our organization, and, pick his brain and see if Christy called you or not, or would you like to be a part of the site visit? I will ask that a lot of times. If there's an employee out there that's volunteering or has a meaningful role in your organization, I'll call them and ask them if they want to go along and be a host when I do a site visit or things like that, and allow them the opportunity to showcase their engagement in the organization and be a secondary advocate for the organization as well. Not everybody does that, but especially in the outlying areas, I absolutely do that.
I have a question. After a conversation like this, and what type of follow-up would you expect, if any, from an applicant?
A lot of times, sending a thank you, or thank you for your time or whatever. It doesn't need to be some huge gesture, but an email or a note or something like that a lot of times is another way to personalize the relationship. If there are follow-up questions, don't be afraid to say, I don't know that, but I can get back to you with that. And if you say that, do it. Do not. Because it shows diligence in your approach, because if you're a flaky flakerton, what impression does that leave with me about the organization and the likelihood that you'll follow through with my money? And then if you're going to go forward and make the application, a lot of times it's helpful if you'll send me an email and say, hey, I completed the application process, take a look, let me know if there are any questions you have. Just some of that, think about it from a customer retention approach. Okay.
Do we
Let's see a video. How long is it?
It keeps people wanting to help and wanting to see people succeed in life instead of just driving by and handing them money when they're holding cardboard signs, If there was more people like the people that have been helping us, there would probably be a lot less people on the streets. And that's why I think this program needed, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Because people actually give me a chance where I've never been given a chance before. It's hard.
That's Stephen and Sarah. They ended up getting their car fixed. He's a veteran, and they're going to be able to drive their baby home from the hospital.
I think that's the other part of it too. Giving context to what it is you're asking for in the sense of outcomes, so that I know the conclusion that's fair to draw from what to expect out of the investment you've asked us for. with a personal and humanized, you know, if you buy me this van or if you get me a van driver, I can haul 43 people and I used to only haul 23 people. Well, that's good, but I hauled that person and they now have, you know, solutions, challenge to overcome, blah, blah, blah. It's different. Then that's a great way of framing the outcome in the context of what it is your mission is and what it is you're asking for, so that I can see how my investment knits into an outcome like that. Great. So, well, thank you for your time. It's
Yeah,
really been
thank you.
good. Don't get hit in the parking lot.
All right,
It's really full.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm very honored to present Molly Sanchez. Molly is a graduate of Eastern Washington University. That's right. You've been with the foundation, which is the Inland Northwest Community Foundation, for about nine years. I got that right. Good. She is the director of community engagement with the foundation. As such, that's an umbrella over a whole bunch of things that she does. One thing of which is that she develops and manages the grant program. So like Christy, get to know her, okay? Build that, what have we been talking about for the last, 2 months? Relationships. It's all about relationships. Get to know these people. Let them get to know who you are and how wonderful you and your organization are. It goes a long, long way. Yeah, an application or proposal is one thing, but what's behind an organization are people. You are the face of your organization. So it's all about relationships. So Christy's got a tour. She lives south of Pullman, and she's got over 2 hours of driving to go home. So let's thank her again for being here. Molly has also worked in with the press into just everything. A lot of marketing, nonprofit development.
Reporting, newspaper writing,
Yeah.
broadcasts.
Yeah. So let's welcome Molly again, shall we?
Thank you. This is a great opportunity to share a little bit more about the Community Foundation and our funding practices, and to especially reiterate what Bob mentioned and what Christy had talked about in terms of relationship building and having a relationship with funders. That's what we're all about. And whenever I do any speaking or presenting, the main point I want to emphasize is don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call. I think it sometimes seems intimidating to do that, but we love to have conversations. And when I say we, it's myself and my cohort, Lauren Nissen. She's actually the primary person on our grants program these days. So you can either call and talk to Lauren or myself if you have any questions about a proposal that you're thinking of submitting. Just run the idea by us and say, this is what we're thinking about doing. Does it seem like a good fit? We always like to know that you've gone to our website beforehand to sort of see what our guidelines are, what our different programs are, and kind of have an idea in your mind of how you think your proposal might fit, and then call us and talk to us about it, and we can, kind of refine that thinking a little bit if need be. We don't actually do a letter of inquiry process, but we have a 2-stage application process that I'll talk about a little bit later on. I know I got ahead of myself because I just wanted to talk about don't hesitate to call us, so that's the number one message. But let me tell you a little bit about the Inland Northwest Community Foundation and how we're a little bit different than the type of organization that Christy represents. So the Community Foundation has been around since 1974. We cover 20 counties, so 10 in Eastern Washington and 10 in North Idaho. We have about $100 million in assets that we manage, and we make about $5 million in grants annually. Those grants can be anywhere across the country. The majority funding stays here within our 20-county region. We do about just over $3 million, I think, kind of in our region. and then the other 2 million go out to other areas across the country. So community foundations are, we're public charities. The first community foundation was established in 1914, I think it was. It was back in Cleveland, was the first community foundation. And it was the brainchild of a person named Frederick Goff, who was a philanthropist, lawyer, banker in Cleveland. And he was trying to think of a way to get philanthropists to kind of pool their money. So with the idea that, they could have more impact by pooling their dollars and doing big projects together versus a lot of individual kinds of giving. So he created the concept of a community foundation, and essentially what it is individuals set up funds within those entities, and then those funds are invested and managed, and then the proceeds are used in a pooled way to make grants and within a specific geographic region. So that's essentially what we do at Inland Northwest Community Foundation. There's about 750 community foundations across the country now. We like to say our motto is that we connect people who care with causes that matter. And the way we make that happen is kind of a three steps along the way. So the first step is that we work with donors to set up funds at the foundation. The second step, as I said, is we manage and invest those funds, and then the third step is we grant them out to nonprofit organizations. When I talk about setting up a fund at the community foundation, there's like about 3 different types of funds, kind of our main types of funds that we work with. The first fund type is called a donor advised fund, and that would be a donor setting up a fund, coming up to us with the $10,000 minimum, saying, I want to set up a donor advised fund at the foundation. So we work with them to do that. And the way that fund works is that donor, as long as they're living, advises us as to where they would like the proceeds to go from their fund on an annual basis. So we'll send a letter once a year saying your fund has generated $2,000 this year, and then just let us know how you want that to be granted out. So at various times during the year, they may call us up and say, okay, I want to make a $500 grant to Kootenai Humane Society, and then our role as staff is really to just vet the organizations, ensure that they are actual 501c3s, and then we just process it, typically based on the donor's recommendation. The other types of funds that we have, people can set up a designated fund, and a designated fund is where the donor says, at the time they set it up, I want the proceeds from this fund to benefit this specific agency. So let's say the Post Falls Food Bank. So they'll set it up that way. That fund will be endowed and it will exist in perpetuity. So even long after that donor has passed away, their fund will continue to put dollars out for the Post Falls Food Bank. So one of the things that's really important to us as a community foundation is that idea of legacy, because people can, set up these funds that will go on in perpetuity. The third type of fund that we have are our discretionary funds, and those are funds that people will set up and say, you know what, we trust you as a community foundation because you kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in my particular region or whatever. So it's basically unrestricted money for you to grant out through your various grant programs. So when we grant dollars out from our competitive programs, that's where they're coming from, is basically a large pool of funds from donors who have said, we trust you and the volunteers that you have from local communities to make the best decisions at any given time on where those grant dollars go. One other thing on that, so while I say they're unrestricted, there are, sometimes donors will put maybe some geographic restrictions. So the donor may say, okay, you can do whatever you want with my fund, but I want you to make sure that the money stays with organizations in Kootenai County. Or they may say, I don't care where within the geographic region you use my dollars, but I want to make sure that they go to senior services, that kind of thing. So in our Community Strategies program, we have about 80 funds now, I believe. And so again, those are all kind of pooled together. And our challenge is, every grant round, is to not only deciding, or seeing what are the most important programs that we want to be able to fund, but then looking at the dollars that we have and seeing, okay, do we have the right kind of dollars in this pool of fund, in this funding pool, to do the types of things that we want to do. And the best example of that, I guess, to illustrate that is, so we have a fund within our community strategies, that's the HUDON fund. And it's a really large fund, and it probably has, $15,000 a year that's available to spend out. But it can only be spent on recreational facilities north of the Spokane River in Spokane County. So as you can imagine, we can go a few years at a time and not spend those dollars out, because we, even though we have proposals we're turning down and we have money, it's not the right kind of money to do it. So every grant round, it's a little bit about kind of like putting a puzzle together to get the right dollar mix to fund what we want to fund. But that's the beauty of a community foundation, is it's based on, it's all about community, and it's based on the types of things that the donors from that community want to fund. And it's also funding decisions that are made with the assistance of volunteers from within the communities. So we as staff process the applications, we vet them to make sure that they're all qualified and eligible and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to the decision making, we have a grants committee of, I think, 12 people right now, from a wide geographic range, so that they can provide input of like what are the most important needs in their community as we're looking at these applications from throughout our 20-county region. In addition to our grants committee, we have a North Idaho Partnership Council that also weighs in specifically on applications from North Idaho. We have an advisory group in the Pullman-Palouse region. And then we have one in rural Eastern Washington. So it really is, it's all about community and what the needs are at that particular time. And that's one of the things that I love about being part of the Community Foundation. Let's see. So our grants process is, it's an online process, kind of similar to what Christy said. Our primary grant program is our Community Strategies Grant Program, and that gives out grant awards ranging anywhere between $5,000 and $30,000. We have a two-tiered process with that. So if a funding request is $10,000 or less, it's just kind of a one-step process, a little less intensive. Fill out the application, submit it. And then kind of the waiting process begins, and then you'll hear back if it's funded or not funded. If it's over that $10,000 amount, we'll look at that initial submission, and if it's something that really looks like it's a fit with the guidelines and would be a competitive grant based on all the other things that we're looking at, then we would invite that organization to fill out the second stage of that application, which has a little bit more detailed information because it is a larger proposal. And then from there, we'll follow up and do either a phone interview or a site visit based on that request to learn a little bit more about it. And that happens with a staff person as well as a representative from our volunteer review committee. So we'll come and just visit and learn a little bit more about the organization, about the request. And then from there, the recommendations come together with the full review of the grants committee for recommendations that go to our board for approval. So again, we do that twice a year. We have a round that opens in July and closes, I think, in August. And then those funds are distributed in December. And then the next round opens in January for funds that are distributed in May. So we do distributions twice a year through our grants program. Let's see, I think that's it. Any questions about Community Foundation? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to try to understand. So you collectively, your donors, then your company that invests in investments, stock markets.
Yeah. So we have an outside investment company that does that for us. FEG, I think is the company that does it, and they actually specialize in that kind of work for community foundations across the country. So, so we work with them, and then they invest the dollars. And the money that's awarded out, it's based on a 13-quarter rolling average of what the what's in that fund, and so that's why we have a finance person to calculate all of those out every year. He just tells us what's available to spend, and then we do it.
So with under $10,000, you don't necessarily do the site visit or the interview?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you attract the donors?
How do we attract the donors?
Right.
So we have a gift planning department, person named PJ Waters, who is amazing, and she's just out and about and everywhere, and just works with people who want to create, you know, a legacy and give through a community foundation. We have a lot of funds with nonprofit organizations. I didn't mention that. So an individual can start a fund. A company can start a fund if they want to do philanthropic giving. In fact, Avista actually, they used to have a fund, and they would use that fund at the community foundation kind of as a donor advised fund, and they would call and say, okay, from our fund, we want, you know, X amount to go here or there. So companies can start a fund, and a lot of nonprofit organizations we work with to create their agency endowment funds, which is really great if an organization can get to that point where they can start an endowment and be kind of regularly contributing to it. So to create that ongoing source of revenue. I can't remember how many
So you
agencies.
would handle all the financial portions of the endowment, basically.
Correct, exactly.
For another nonprofit.
Right.
And they would
Exactly.
be able to control it.
Right.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Are we ready? Same situation as we had with Avista. This is a preliminary meeting with Molly to see if they have what she might be interested in. So let's start with an introduction, and we'll go from there.
Molly.
Hi.
Clark Richmond.
Clark, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, Donna Brundage.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here today. So in this case, Christy didn't break the wall here. I'm going to assume I don't know anything about Trinity Group Homes. In real life, we have funded before, and it is a great organization. But it's to just kind of set that background. So I'll just look at this as kind of an introductory meeting if it were like a new nonprofit that we hadn't, ever connected with before. So.
Yeah, and this will help with some literature, but
Great.
we're open books. We have the information in our.
Clark has his elevator speech, but
Yeah, so
we actually use these for presentations. They're
Oh,
like
nice.
2 foot by 3 foot.
yeah, and we have brochures too, but that describes a little bit about us, a little bit about costs relative to other housing. Trinity Group Homes, we house adults with severe mental health challenges.
Okay.
And what makes us really stand apart is that we're able to do that in a semi-independent environment. We collaborate with community agencies, community mental health agencies to provide support. But people are able to live with severe mental illness in a very less restrictive environment. There's no live-in staff. They function very well. They take care of their chores, their medications, their laundry, their
Cooking,
cleaning. And so we help them develop those skills to live a higher quality of life, and then we also work on getting them out into the community and engaging the community, building confidence. As we interviewed some of our residents this last week, just what is Trinity for them, and they want to get their lives back. And myself was actually a Trinity resident at one time.
Oh.
So, and it is about that. It's getting your life back, and that can mean transition. Trinity can be a transitional program, but it also we have no minimum or maximum length of stay.
Okay.
And so there are residents that have lived with us for years and years, and will live for several years longer. And we're about ready. We have an opportunity to grow. Right now, we have 4 4 different locations. We have 2 houses in Post Falls and 2 houses in Coeur d'Alene. We have 33 beds. Every resident has their own locking room, but they share space. They share a living room, dining room, kitchen, laundry facilities, and so they have to learn to get along, and it can work really well for some people, and then some people need more privacy. And so what is happening, we're a part of St. Vincent de Paul, which happened in November of 2015. We merged. But we have a new opportunity where we have 16 units that are opening up that were part of transitional housing, and that was a HUD grant that's ending in the end of October. And so those folks are going to be hopefully placed with our Angel Arms program with St. Vincent de Paul, where they'll find independent housing, and that's going to open up these studio apartments to Trinity. So,
And what that does is it opens up to a demographic that like no one else does, which is married couples. And they don't have to be married couples, but there can be, people again that like they're so over the roommate situation and they want to dry their wings a little bit and see if they can live on their own before they go to their next step, which would be like an independent low-income housing. Or they don't want to live in a group home anymore, but they want the support and the safety net that we provide. We do wellness checks on them, and they tell on each other all the time. So we know if someone's about to enter a mental health crisis, and at which point, we're the boots on the ground. We're the first line of defense for that. Whereas if they're just in their own apartment, they don't have that. So we can notify their treatment team, or we can get them to the intervention center, or we can get a more intensive layer of or a level of coverage and supervision and help for them. So it's that combined with the life skills programming. We're the only ones that do that. The only ones that provide that level without being 24 hours a day. And we try to get them into the community so that they don't feel so stigmatized, because a lot of them do.
So tell me, I'm curious about, for both of you, kind of what your how long you've been with the organization and kind of how you ended up getting there. I mean, you kind of mentioned a little bit
about my
yeah,
story,
and I'm always
Yeah.
interested to know and what motivates people to be where they are.
yeah, well, both of us have an extensive mental health background working with, I actually worked at the same organization.
Like 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But my license is on hold, but I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor by background, and have worked in the mental health field for over 20 years. I was kind of always in that service-oriented, human resource mindset. I was in the Peace Corps years ago, which also stemmed mental health challenges for me. I ended up in Trinity after a very terrible mental health crisis went south, and I was actually spent time incarcerated, and I met Bob Runkle, who was affiliated with the Episcopal Church, and he actually came to visit me when I was in jail, and flashed up his eyes. And I was worried about where I was going to live, how I was going to. I didn't want to be on disability because I knew I could work if I had my mental health stabilized. And he flashed up his card, the deacon card at St. Luke's, but also that he was the executive director of Trinity.
Okay.
So I ended up living there for 6 months and then going and doing different work, detailing cars, and a job came up in June of 2015 to be the life skills coordinator, which at the time was still Trinity Incorporated. And then when we merged in November, so later that year, my coworker had a difficult time, I think, with the transition and merging. She was used to just the small standing mom and pop, and I was able to transition, and have enjoyed working with St. Vincent's. So, it'll be 2 years in June. I'll be with Trinity.
So tell me about your experience of living at Trinity. What was that like? What did that do for you? What did you find there?
I was really grateful, to be in I was in our 9th Street house, which is close to town. I was, I think kind of an odd, resident. I was very, just I would help other residents, kind of do like CBRS, community-based rehab. I'd be their PSR worker, their, kind of help residents with their cooking and their cleaning. And so it was also challenging living with people that had some symptoms. But I was clearly somebody that was going to transition, that looked at it as something that was going to be there for 6 months or 9 months, and then I would move on. But I appreciated having it was a safe place. I didn't have to deal with, I think sometimes transition houses, they're crammed 2 or 3 in one bedroom. I felt like my belongings were safe. The people that I lived with were gentle people. So it was as time goes along, it seems like a smaller segment of time, but I was just really thankful, and I got to know Bob really well, and I'm still in good contact with him.
So what are the options for people who aren't able to get in to Trinidad? There's a meeting.
It depends a lot on their level of functioning. A lot of them end up in supportive living situations. I shouldn't say a lot. Some of them end up in supportive, like Harmony House, where there's 24-hour staff supervision. Your meals are provided, your rooms are cleaned, your medication, they make you take your medication. If they're very acute, they may end up at state hospital for months and months and months. A lot of them end up in the wrong system because they'll go out and they'll shoplift, or they'll do something where they're not even aware of what the repercussions can be, and they end up in the criminal system, which is not where they need to be because they need help. And that's the pretty harsh reality of it. A lot of them end up homeless. People living under the bridges, people living on the park benches and scattering at Sunrise and going to 2nd Street, coming to the help center. We've had people come out of our shelter. We've had, several people that'll go to the shelter off of the streets and then stabilize and get wraparound services and get the treatment team, which is a really big piece of what we do, is we work with community-based providers because our residents need that. They need that.
It's a requirement. It's for the foundation of our program, is that collaboration. And we take, you asked to, where Donna answered it very well, but part of people that are incarcerated and are working the specialty courts, we've had a large success with mental health court participants, which was my background too. But it's people are waiting for housing. They're in jail and they've stabilized and they're ready, and the courts, they don't want to release them into the without a stable. So we've been a huge we've helped with CUNY County Mental Health Court. We're a big resource for them, as well as State Hospital.
And it's reciprocal because some of these people, knowing that they have to meet with Greg Willie, who's the probation officer, it helps. It helps them follow the rules until they're ready to do it on their own without having to have something hanging over their head. Because some of them don't want to, at least not initially.
So how can funding from the Community Foundation help with your project?
Well, we're basically going to inherit a building full of empty studio apartments, which we're going to call them cottages because we like that better.
They're studios.
But they're studio apartments, and we need furniture, and we need plates, and we need hand mixers, and we need toasters, and we need television sets, because mentally ill people shouldn't sit in an empty room with nothing to occupy their time.
And there's some light refurbishing too. These units are bare bones, and if we do come to the point where we'd have a site visit, it would be, I think, apparent as to what we want to make this place at home. Our residents generally have a budget have an income of somewhere around $730 a month, and rent is fairly, pretty large portion because we don't take state or federal funding, and so that our residents pay out of their SSI or SSDI, or people. So our residents work, like in my case, I work to pay the rent. But there's not a lot of extra money to buy beds, to buy to furnish a place,
to buy a futon, to buy plates,
What do you do for maintenance? Do you have like a
We
maintenance
have St. Vincent's
person?
Maintenance Department.
Okay, nice.
We have their administrative office. We have, part of the merger, that was part of the piece that really helped
Good.
because, there's a finance director.
Yeah.
And there's admin support and things like that, which Trinity Inc. did not have. So they had to pay all those, they had to contract those services out, and that was a big part of their budget. And so we're less dependent on grants and funding from the community for the daily operational things. We can maintain, with the rent, it's a balanced budget, but to do something special, to expand, to do something like this, to furnish these the way that we feel that people deserve to have them furnished and not have to go to thrift stores to buy couches. We want to have them have some dignity, and so that's why we're asking for a grant to help to do that, to help to furnish these.
So, do you have vendors that you work with? I mean, are they like only going to be furnished the same, or are you just like allotting X amount of dollars per unit and then let?
We did online searches.
Okay.
We do not have a specific vendor picked out yet. Obviously, we'd love to go locally and say, hey, we need 16 futons. Can you help us out? But we got ballpark figures.
Okay.
We looked at futons because of the way they're structured. It was either we build a Murphy bed and it comes out like the old I Love Lucy show or Mary Tyler Moore, or we buy a futon and then they have a couch and then they have a bed. And we tried to think that way, dual purpose. There's already tables built in that do come down from the wall, and we have
high quality too. I'd like to get
Yeah.
stuff that's going to last.
Yeah.
So.
How do you determine who's going to get into those units?
We already have
triage.
We already got that done. Yeah.
So again, with our living environment, the milieu we have, there are people that function very well in that, and then some people are just like, oh, I need to get out on my own. There's significant barriers with mental health issues. A lot of times there are criminal charges and also addiction, co-occurring disorders, and so there's barriers in finding the next step, the next apartment, and so this would be that where they would have their own place.
Because it's the first go round, and there are offices in this building too. I mean, we are kind of we want it to be successful, and we want it to be long term, and we want it to be sustaining. So we are going to keep a close eye on them. So we're probably going to draw from our existing resident base.
We already have.
They're going to have the priorities, but we have people. We have people that have lived in a group home for 12 years that are what? You're gonna do you really sign me up. We thought a couple of these residents were oh, they'll never go anywhere, and they were all about it.
Yeah.
So
and others want to stay in their homes.
Yeah.
and others like the group home. They like the very convenient socialization aspect of it.
So, how do you determine success with the
That's
clients?
a great question.
That is a great question. You've been
Because
agonizing
they have a
over.
really nice place for them to live, which they need to have because of dignity and all of that.
Yeah.
But what if they
Okay.
just stay there?
So we have been literally, we've been agonizing because it's so personalized. Because what's successful for one person
Right, yeah.
would be nothing for another one to do.
Yeah.
And I think what we've come to is when they are able to maintain at their point in their life at this level of restriction on their living situation, so they're not going back to state hospital, they're not going back to prison, they're not going back to a homeless shelter, they're not leaving and going to live in the park, which we have some of them do. So that's a failure. So we went through the 30 people that we discharged last year. It was 30, right? Approximately 30. And we went through every
Last 2
scenario.
years, year and a half.
Last 2 years, yeah. Every scenario when they left. And we looked at it to try to get some kind of a baseline of okay, well, is this one successful? Why is this one successful? Why do we consider this a success? It was we have one resident who works at Home Depot and who, got involved with the VFW, and he's doing groups and he's doing all these things. He had a mental health crisis and he left and didn't pay his rent twice this year. So we couldn't maintain him where he was, because if you can't pay your rent, you can't stay in your housing. That's just the reality. But we don't consider him a failure, because he's not. Because when he came to us, he wasn't able to do any of those things, and now he can. So it's...
Yeah, and then 30%, our residents transition to their own independent living
Okay.
situation. We've had also in that, we've had, like, I can think of one person in particular, a couple of them, where Trinity was like the first stop out of Port of Hope. And one gentleman there is doing really well. One gentleman needed much higher level of care, so we basically were almost a safe house for him, as above and beyond what we can do. But he moved into Harmony House and is doing very well. So that was a success. And then the population that we struggle with, I wouldn't say completely struggle with, but is somebody that has a strong addiction issue. And we've lost residents to incarceration who have relapsed. We do as much as we can to get them into treatment. I don't know if there's the people that go to AA or NA succeed more, but I think that's been our most challenging population, and people that, I guess, quote unquote, don't succeed, or people with strong addiction issues.
Yeah. And we looked at our numbers. So out of the 30, over half did well. And by did well, that means that they either went into, low-income housing, or they went to a more appropriate place, or they moved in with family members, or they maintained. They got their lives back. That was the key word when we asked our residents what they wanted. They said, "I want my life back. I want to be able to function in this world the way I did before the mental health crisis hit." Because for a lot of them, it's in their 20s. Like the symptoms start showing up when they're older, and they know what it's like to be okay. Like some of our residents were in college and they had to drop out. Some of them had jobs and they had to drop out. We have a 60-year-old woman who worked her whole life and had a mental health crisis in her 50s and lost everything, and she wants her life back.
So, does your organization have a strategic plan?
That's the other one.
So we're part of. We pinned down our executive director, Jeff Conroy. It's like, we're going to get this, because Bob had asked us, our friend Bob over had asked us about this. And so basically St. Vincent's, it sounds like they're still in their process of strategic planning, but we've expanded, St. Vincent's has expanded to Shoshone County, and they're looking to expand in Bonner County. And so with those expansion of stores and services and other housing, I think that will open up. I mean, this first thing is an expansion strategic plan, is for us to fill this 16-unit facility and see how that, and then as opportunities arise, we would love to be up in Bonner County. There's a huge, people are crying out for housing up there, and an option for people with mental illness. And so and we both have ties to the Sandpoint area, so that's.
I live in Sandpoint. I commute. But yeah, I mean, to sum it up, St. Vincent's has a 5-year strategic plan.
Okay.
We are part of it, and we are under that umbrella. And they're probably, the housing subcommittee of the board is probably more excited about the potential for the Trinity program to grow and to expand and to kind of explode than any other piece of what they do. So they're like, there's a lot of focus on us. Like, we have to present at the all-staff meeting next week, and that kind of thing. And we're doing the rounds with the Kiwanis and all of the Rotary clubs and things like that to get the name out there, to get known in the community. We're part of their strategic plan.
And again, it's this first phase is the 16-unit, and then something, again, has been discussed, is if the opportunity comes up for a house in Shoshone County, and then something in Bonner County.
So with this new units of housing, do you need additional staff then? I know you talked about you've got
Yes.
We do.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
We will
how,
be adding staff.
so what additional staff will you need, and what's the funding plan for that?
It's still in the works. When we looked at the budget, I mean, we're basically growing by 50%. Where our occupancy is going to go from 33 beds to 45 to 50, or depending if there's couples or. So we're looking to add another full-time staff, and we already have somebody. that
Another
we're-
full-time staff, and we're expanding our volunteer base too.
Yeah.
A couple different things we're doing with volunteers. One of them is hands-on. He helps deliver supplies, and he helps transport residents, and he's helping with file audits and things like that. Some of them are like NIC college students. And at University of Idaho, we have the extension office. They do an Eat Right program. So once a week, as part of our life skills group, she comes out and she's a dynamic personality. Comes out and teaches them how to pick healthy choices at the food bank, and then we're going to cook those now. And she'll give them recipes, and she'll talk to them about. She did one where she took baggies of sugar to illustrate this is what's in a Coke, and this is and she did one on salt and this is McDonald's French fries to show them, to give them a visual of the junk they eat. So we have that, and then we want to, when we do this expansion, there is a classroom there, which we're not asking for money from you guys for, but we're asking somebody else for money for that. And we're going to do a computer lab, and we're going to, and it's like these kind of tables, so they can be put together with a tablecloth, and we can have a huge community, let's do Thanksgiving dinner. With a kitchen. We're going to put a full operational kitchen in there, but we're also going to use the NIC culinary class to come out and do cooking. We have one of those mirrors over the thing, like Emerald, and to teach them here's how you use a knife, or here's how you use a laptop, here's how you set up Facebook, this guy is not from Nigeria and he really doesn't want to marry you, he's not a prince, because that kind of thing, because I get sucked into that all the time.
So will you be able to use that classroom for other residents but who aren't necessarily in that building, or is that part of your planning now? So you'll be able to use that space for other.
Yeah, we plan on bringing the group home residents in, and again, socialization. One of the other things our residents told us was that where the program really helped them was we do a game night where they come together at one of the houses and one of them cooks and they socialize and play games or watch movies and that kind of thing, and it really is we don't realize the impact on it until you hear them say it, but them not isolating in their rooms and being forced socialization we don't force them to go, but the ones that do go actually do better, and they're like, you know what, you made me feel like it was okay to sit in a room full of people, and because I was okay with Trinity residents, then I was okay to go to the farmer's market. And it's a step to get them out, because they think everybody they must know that I have a mental illness when they're walking down the street. They just feel that way, that the whole world thinks they're different. So anything that we can do to help them ease that, it really helps them.
So with the furnishing then in the building, that if we're able to fund that, does that make them ready to go? So you'll get the building in October, I think you said?
And it's probably closer to December.
Okay, so then if our grant funding comes in December, then you can get the furniture, and then people will be ready to move in. You don't have to do anything more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, we've got 11 of the 16 units already. We've got a waiting list right now for it.
Okay.
Then we have to fill the group homes back up, but that'll be okay too.
Yeah.
That'll get more people out of state and out of jail, so it's win-win.
Well, I think the timing is really great for the next round of community strategies, and it's clear you've done a lot of planning and that sort of stuff behind it. So one of the things that we look for is the timing right. If it were early on, we would maybe say wait for a round or that kind of thing. But this is really right on target. So I would say, fill out the preliminary application and then see if you can invite it back to do it.
All right. You guys want to come see us?
There?
You want to come out?
Well, so if it goes to the second round, then,
you do that.
then we'll do a site visit.
That, right?
Yeah. So we'll have to do a site visit. So thank you. I think it sounds like an awesome project. Do you have any questions for me about the Community Foundation?
How much? I was curious about with this population, with people that have mental health challenges, persistent mental health challenges, and housing. What's specifically on those populations? I did research, but I didn't necessarily see that reflected. Is that an area of interest?
Where we do. So being a community foundation, we cover basically all areas of community vibrancy and vitality. It's not like we focus on any, given specific area. So this is really, kind of in the sweet spot because it's mostly, human services kinds of things.
Right.
Homelessness is, we obviously recognize as being a huge, homelessness and mental health. Just as an aside, we're doing a separate initiative in Spokane County.
Oh, wow.
That's working with homeless families and as it relates to mental illness and that. So it's something that I think our grants committee, definitely understands the need and importance for that kind of thing. So,
Great.
yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
It's really nice
to
meeting you.
meet you.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Yeah, this
All
is
right.
really good.
Thank you, guys.
So Joe, if you can sort of like wrap up.
I'm sorry?
Joe, can I like go over?
It's yours, yes. Oh, yes.
So that was really good. Thank you guys were awesomely prepared, and it was great to learn more about the organization. A lot of the things that I was kind of trying to hit on throughout the discussion is really these are the questions that our grants committee, or the different areas that our grants committee kind of considers as they're evaluating an application or having conversations. And we have this information on our website. So it's called Grant Review and Assessment Consideration. So if you go poke around on our grant section of our website, you can find it. And we sort of feel like these are kind of the answers to the tests for people. But really what it is again, it's just the different areas that we kind of want to find out more about. And it's not that a proposal has to hit a home run in every single one of these areas, but we want to know that, there's been some thought given to, kind of all these different areas. And so I'll just kind of go through them really quickly. But the first is the program plan, meaning does the organization, can they really adequately describe what the program, the project is? And does it appear that there's been adequate planning that's taken place behind it? And it was clear from that they researched the budget figures and things like that and knew who the people who were going to be getting into the housing. And so there was some planning, definitely some clear planning. A lot of times we can look at an application and sort of get the sense of, oh, this organization saw that the deadline was coming up and, said, oh, we better put an application in. So, we want to know that there's really a good plan behind the proposal. The capacity of the organization, does it appear that the organization has the capacity to do what they're proposing to do? And that was kind of my question about, are you going to need more staff? Or are you just thinking you're going to do the building, and then what? But, to know that what the capacity issues are, and again, having the planning and forethought about that is really helpful. The impact and the results, what's that going to be? And so we kind of talked about, what that can mean for people who get into that housing. Timeliness and importance is another issue that a topic that we look at. How significant is, this particular issue at any given time in a community? Homelessness and mental health issues are pretty significant issues these days. Sometimes I'll tell people this timeliness thing is really a significant factor when we look at a lot of proposals that might be really similar or a really similar priority. They all look good, but there might be something happening in a community at any given time that maybe says this is a more significant need right now and we need to address it. I'll use an example. I think when Coldwater Creek closed in Sandpoint, our grants committee was really intentional about, is there more money that kind of needs to be flowing into this area for things like food banks and things like that at that particular time. So timeliness is really a big one. And that doesn't mean all the other proposals that we were looking at weren't as important, but those were just more timely at that moment. Let's see, the sustainability, if it's an ongoing program or project, is there a plan for future funding? This is a one-time expense, so that's kind of a little bit easier. Don't have to address that so much. But knowing that there's a long-term plan in place with some strategic planning that's happening along with St. Vincent's, that's really helpful to hear. And then one of the things that we consider when we think about it is just what our reaction is. And Christy talked about that a lot, and she probably said it, I couldn't say it any better. It's just, what's the excitement factor, or what's the heart factor for the evaluator, or for the grant reviewers? Is this a project that it's like, wow, this sounds really cool, and that's really important. As she said, everybody can do a good proposal, but is there something about it that really sparks particular interest, or feelings of why we really feel like we need to do this. So those are kind of, again, the things on the website that definitely take a look at and think through as you're writing a proposal. Again, call us and ask questions as you're kind of working through a proposal, or you may see a question on the application and you don't quite know how it might apply to your particular project and want to talk that through. We're happy to visit about those kinds of things. And then after the grant review process, the other thing that I like to really emphasize is if a proposal gets declined, to be sure and call and get some feedback on that as well. Again, we decline really good proposals all the time, and it's just the nature of it, because there's not enough money to go around. So don't just assume if a proposal was declined that it wasn't a good proposal and you should never submit it again. On the other hand, don't assume that it was a good proposal and you can just resubmit it again either. Because sometimes what will happen is somebody submits something and it's just not a great fit with the guidelines and it gets declined. And if a person doesn't call and get that feedback, they might assume, well, I'm just going to do it again in the next round. But it's still not a fit with the guidelines. And so that's just creating, work that you don't need to be doing and reviewing that we don't need to be doing. So, so just call and get that feedback. And then if it's not a fit with the guidelines, we can talk through, maybe there's something else going on with your organization or program that would be a fit. And so we can kind of help suss that out a little bit. So our role is, we're here for the donors of the Community Foundation to be able to make good grants that improve communities. And we can't do that without a really strong nonprofit sector and organizations that are doing really good work. And so we want to give out as much money as we can to programs that can be successful, and however we can help those programs be successful, we want to be able to do that. So, it really is, we do see it as a partnership. So that's really one of the last things that is a really important point to me that I try to get across is the idea of getting rid of that funder power dynamic where it's, the funder up here and sprinkling money down or something, that it really is a partnership between, the donors who want to do good work and the organizations that are doing it, and, us being a facilitator and making that happen.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thanks. It's very close to my heart, yes.
Do we, as the nonprofits, need, upon applying for a grant, do we need to know which grant we fit in, or do you make that decision?
So, what we would like to see is, to kind of just go to our website first and see, kind of have you that initial exploration and say, okay, I think this makes sense for us. And then have the conversation about, you can say, this is what we think, and then we'll talk about it from there. We don't have too many programs anymore. We used to have quite a few more, but we've combined a lot of them under that Community Strategies umbrella. So just really quick is Community Strategies, which is any geographic area and is basically all program areas. So pretty much anybody, if you're a 501c3, is going to fit within the Community Strategies program. And then we have the Equinox program that we do, which is geographically limited to organizations in Bonner and Boundary counties. We have what's called our Opportunity Grants program, which again is open to the 20 county geographic area. Those are smaller grants. They're only up to about $2,000, and they're for very specific emergency, unexpected kinds of purposes. And we try to turn those around in 30 days.
Is that a type of grant that stays open all year then?
It's open all year, and it's really, I'll warn you, it's really, really hard to fit within kind of these funky guidelines we have. But if you're in that situation where you fit those guidelines, it can be a really helpful grant. So what we say is it's for an unexpected need or opportunity. And so that defining what's an unexpected need is always a little bit challenging.
Paying our Vista bill.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that needs to be something that should have reasonably been planned for. I think, I'm trying to think of examples. One example was a few years back, I think it was in North Idaho even, a house with stray cats, and it was like just this inordinate number of cats in the cat house, and the Humane Society or whoever was going to have to clear them out, and they said, we budget for this every year, but there's no way we would have ever anticipated this was going to happen. So we were able to give them a grant to get some of them to Seattle or something to do with them. So, so those kinds of things. So it really has to be that thing you couldn't, it's something that was unanticipated or unexpected. So. Yes.
I was just wondering, Christy was talking about sponsorships. Are you strictly grant money?
We're strictly grants, yep.
Okay, thank you.
So can I have some money?
Can you have some if you have an emergency?
How did you think they did? I thought they did amazing.
It was great. Yeah, answered all my questions. I went down the list. Check. You got it. So,
You guys balanced each other out really, really well, too.
That's really good.
Really well.
Yeah.
Molly, you've given us a great gift tonight, and I really appreciate you a lot. And so thank you for taking the time to visit with us. And I'm going to give you this. It's our syllabus basically for all our classes. Your name's not on here because it's a last-minute thing. But it'll give you some idea, and you're welcome to attend any of our classes coming up. We've got three really good ones happening, so stop in anytime.
Thanks
Be
for asking
part of the
me. And
family.
I just want to say thanks for all of you and the work that you do, because honestly, without the nonprofit sector, our communities would be falling apart. So thank you for taking care of everybody in all our communities.
Well, thank you and your
We support
foundation.
your work.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Thanks, Molly.